Alright, this is a video on how to make a website. Eventually this website's going to link to our MySQL database, but to start with, this is just the video on how to make a website from scratch using HTML. We're opening brackets and we're using brackets. You really need to have on your computer ready for this activity. You need to have brackets, you need to have MAMP, you need to know how to navigate to the htdocs folder inside MAMP. Then once we start up MAMP, you'll have a database. You can do all of that based on the other video, but for this video it's how to make the website. So with any website, when you open a comment like at HTML which says this is a website, you have to then close that same comment with a backslash. You can see it in here. See, I've put a little backslash in there, so that means that's the opening statement and that's the closing statement. Now brackets is pretty clever, that if you save the file, then it'll start doing some of these things for you. So we're going to go File, Save As. We're going to save it into the htdocs folder. So for those people who need to see, you go to MAMP, you go down to htdocs. We're going to save it into here and we're going to call it players.html. Because it's an HTML file, we actually do want to put the extension HTML on here so that we know that it works, right? So we hit save. Now brackets knows that it's HTML, and so now when we start to write things, it should put a start and an end. Now at the start of every website you want to have the heading, right? So and you want to have a title for the website and so on and so forth. So let's start with, let's put head. So if we put head in, you'll see this time it has closed the heading automatically. I didn't have to type this one, it automatically did it. So that's pretty good. So we'll just hit a return in there. Now we're going to put some stuff inside this heading area in here, and we're also going to have the main section of the website down here. So for the main section of the website, we're going to call it the body, and it closes it again. We'll put a couple of lines in. Now space doesn't matter in websites, so you can have as much white space as you like. It doesn't really affect it. Inside the heading, the first thing we want to do is we want to put a title, and for the purpose of this, the title will actually be what appears on the website on the tab. So if we go into, say, Safari up here and we make a new tab, the tab will have a title up here. So for example, in this one, Google is the title up there. This one's MAMP is the title. So when we make a website, we want our tab to actually have a title. So we're going to do that. So let's get back to brackets, and we're going to put our title in. We're going to call this player database entry. Alright, so that's going to be the title of our page, is player database entry. Now the actual page itself, we want that to have a heading, right? So what we can do, we're already in the head section in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a bracket here, and we're going to call it H1. Now H1 is the actual size of the heading, so we can make that H2, H3, H4, H5, and that'll be the size of the heading that comes onto your page. Now we're going to use H1, that's the biggest, so we're going to just start there, and we're going to call it player data entry. Okay, now I'm just going to save this and go File, Save. Now because we're saving our file into our htdocs folder, we can go into MAMP, and then we can go to website, and we should have our files here. I've already got another file in there. If we click on the player, we should have, there it is, there's our heading, player data entry, and you can see at the top here, player database entry is our title up here. So our website's starting to work, okay? So that's the first bit. Let's go back to brackets. Now once we're in brackets, we've got our heading, so we might as well reduce this a little bit and take that white space out. Now in class, a lot of people ask me, can you do it all on one line? The answer is yes. We could potentially just do this and have, there's the title on one line, and then we have our heading all on one line. And in fact, I only put the spaces in because I think it's easier for people to read and understand what's going on. What I'll also do is I'll just show you here an example of H3 instead of H1. So I'll just put H3 in here. I'll save that changes. We'll go back to our map and we'll refresh. And you can see the heading got smaller. Okay, so that's the size that you input in here will affect the size that's previewed on the screen. Yes, you can change colors. We'll do all that sort of stuff later. Right now, we just want to make it simple website. Now, down here in the body section, we want to put in a paragraph about what this website's about. So we're actually going to call it P for paragraph. And inside of here, we're going to say, this is a website for entering data about football players and their cars. Right, that's what our website's about. So we tell whoever's doing it that's what it's about. Now, the next thing we want to do is actually we want to start entering some data. So to enter some data, we need to have input statements. But those input statements have to be in something. They have to be in like an area that remembers all the information that is input, and then it can be sent to another file. So what we're going to do is we're going to open a form. Okay, and the form, inside the form, we're going to put our input statements. Now, our first one might be, please enter the player name, player first name, player first name. Please enter the player first name. Oh, I don't need the capitals. Please enter the player's first name. Please enter the player's first name. Okay, now we're going to do an input statement because we want it to be an input. We want to have the type of input to be text, and we want to name the input, and we're going to call it first. Then we're going to close that statement. Okay, now I'll just explain briefly what we've done here. We have entered a statement that says please enter the player's name first, and that's what the user will see on the screen. Here we've said the type of entry, we want it to be text, so we want the user to enter the word text, and then whatever they enter, we want that to be stored in a variable called first. Right, so the name of the variable essentially is going to be called first, and so that's going to store that information in a variable called first, and later we're going to send that information somewhere else into a PHP file, which is then going to put it into our database. But for the purpose of the website, this is where we start. So let's save that and just check how that's going. Let's go back to here, hit refresh. Okay, so we can see we've got our heading. I put it back to H1. We have our paragraph. This is a website for entering data about football players and their cars, and then we have our first section here. Now, if I hit here and say Peter, then Peter doesn't really do anything. It just kind of sits there. If I hit enter, nothing happens. It just sort of kind of disappeared. Nothing actually happened. So we need something to happen when we actually click enter. So we need some sort of button. We need some sort of entry button, or submit button or something like that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a button. Now the button, what we could do, a lot of people will just do button, right, and then that'll put a button down the bottom and that sort of stuff, but that's not actually what we want to do. We want to have a button that sends the data, so we're going to actually do another input statement, and this time we're going to say type equals submit, and we're going to have value equals submit. Now you can actually change some of these things. You could have in here value equals press button or enter or something like that, but we just want it to be a submit button. We want, at the moment, this is the most simple website that we can create for doing what we need to do, right? So we've put input type submit, value submit. Right, now let's save that, go back to our web page and have a look. And you'll see straight away we have a submit button here, right? So this submit button has just come in, and if we click it, it makes a click noise and it submits, but it doesn't really do anything, right? So we need to say what happens when you actually click the submit button. What does it actually do? What's the action? So in fact, action is the right word, and part of our form here, we're going to put in what the action is and how that works. Just before we do that, after this entry line here, I don't like the way that we enter the data and then the submit button is on the same line. So I want to just add in a break. In fact, I want to add in a few breaks. And a break is like a return on your keyboard. So I'm going to add in 2 breaks here, save it. Then we go back and refresh, and the button has moved from up here down to down there, which I think is much better. Okay, now we've got the button sitting there. We want to be able to use that button to do something. So you can see on the screen here we've got the submit and the value submit. So the button wants to submit it, but it wants to send it somewhere. So we need to say where we're going to send that. So what we do is we go back to the top of the form, the first start of the form section in here, and we're going to put an action in. And what that action is that's going to say, this is what I want you to do when the submit button is clicked. So the action here, we're going to find a file. Now, this is where I already had a file created called insert data, but I'm going to show you that file as well later. But right now, we're going to have insert data.php. So the action is going to be, when the submit button is clicked, go and find this file, insert data.php. And what we want it to do is we want it to post. Essentially, post is what it's called, like the mail. We want it to post the information from this website to that file over there. So in this situation, in our first one we've got here, we have, please enter the player's first name. It has to be text that's entered, and store that name in a section called first. Then when the submit button is clicked, what you have to do is send that first information to this insert.php file. That's what the post means. You've got to send it to this file over here. Once it's sent to this PHP file, we're going to do something with it. We're going to put it into the database. But at this stage, we're just collecting the data. So because we're collecting the data, we also want to put in more than just one thing. So what I'm going to do is copy this line, just Command C, put in a return. Remember, the white spaces in HTML don't matter. Paste that line in again. This time we're going to put last name. Please enter the player's last name. Input, I still want it to be text, except this time I want it to be called last. So now that's going to be stored, the information from the player's last name is going to be stored in last. Now, what I would also like to do is have a drop-down menu where the person can choose the player's nationality, right? So let's make a sentence and let's just say, please select your nationality. Now, we want them to select. Now, we want them to select from a choice of different things. So what we have to do here is we actually use the select statement. But I'm not going to close this bracket yet. We're going to select, and what we're going to do here is whatever is selected, we're going to call it the name of Nat. We're just going to call it Nat for nationality. Then we're going to close this first bracket. Now, you'll see brackets automatically makes this close of select as well, right? So we've closed the bracket, but we haven't closed the select section yet. So in here, we want to put in our options. So our first option, we put the heading option, and we give it the value. Let's think, how do we do this? Let's do option. Yeah, we'll give it the value. We've got the word value, and we're going to put in whatever we want in there to be. So let's put Italian first. Now you see the color hasn't changed. This first bracket here needs to actually be open so that that value goes inside that bracket there. And then we put in here what the choice is going to be for the person. So Italian is going to be the choice. So now we've got one option. So if there's a drop-down menu, the drop-down menu is going to give them at the moment one choice of Italian, but they obviously need more than one choice of Italian, so one choice of nationality. So let's just copy that whole section there, Command C, let's paste that a few times, and we'll give our person more nationality to choose from. So a lot of soccer players are European, so let's use some European names here. Let's go with German, and the option the person sees is German. Let's put in French. Okay, let's put in Brazilian. Let's put in, what else? English. Okay, now I want to show you how this works. So we've got the first input here, which is please enter your first name. The second input is please enter your last name. The third one is please select your nationality, and that's saved in the variable called nat. And then there are the options here. So let's save this file, Command S, go back to our preview. Now, one of the things I didn't show you in brackets is you can actually just click this little lightning bolt up in the top left-hand corner up here, and that'll do a live preview for you. But because we're using MAMP, and because we're essentially going to put this into a database, I'm just doing it through MAMP. So if I go to here and refresh here, it'll give me the live preview. Now, you'll see I forgot to do breaks at the end of here, so my submit button's in the wrong spot. But I can now do the first name, and then I can do the last name, then I can select the nationality, so I haven't got Australian in there, but I can put English, and then I would click the submit button. And if I click the submit button, if you remember from our brackets file, it's going to go and look for a file called insertdata.php. Here's the thing. First thing is I want to put in an Australian option because I'm Australian, so I'm going to copy that, hit enter, hit paste. So now I can put in here Australian as my nationality, and I'll put in here the option for the people, AUSTRAN, right? And that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, obviously, you're going to want to put in a few more nationalities. You want Argentinian if you've got Messi. You know, you want to have Portuguese if you've got Ronaldo. So you want to put a few more nationalities in here. But for the starting, to show that this works, this is a good way to do it. Now, a couple of students in class asked about adding a color. Now, same with pretty much everything else in the HTML here. If you want to add a color, you have to have a start and a close. So we're going to change the color of this line. It says please enter the player's last name. And to do that, we're going to open with a font like so. Now that's giving me an open and a close. So I'm just going to get that close. I'm going to Command X and cut that. I'm just going to paste it down here. Okay, open and close it. Inside this one here, I'm going to write color, and remember you have to write it in American with no U. That's just how it works in this program. It's color like that, and we're going to put a color in here, so we're going to put red. So now if we run the program, this will be red. Probably all this will be red as well because we haven't changed it back to a different color, right? But to start with, we're just going to do this, hit Command S to save, go back over here, refresh our screen. Oh, good, so it only did that section in red, so that's really good. Let's check if the Australian's in there. Yes, it is. So now I could potentially click submit and it would have Australian. I still didn't move that submit button either, and I need to kind of put a space in between there as well for my drop-down menu. So I want to do that as well. So let's go back to our brackets. I'm going to put a space in here, and I'm going to put some breaks. These are the breaks here, remember? I'm going to copy those, and I'm going to put those breaks after the select, after we've closed the select, right? So I'm putting in 2 breaks, so it's dropping it down 2 lines, right? Command S to save, go back to my file, refresh my file, and my button's moved and I've got a bit of space in there, so that looks much better. So that's essentially how we make the website. That's how we make the HTML file, and that's the end of that part. Now the next video I'm going to show you how to make the insert data.php file. That's a completely different video, and essentially what's going to happen is we're going to take these names here, this first, this last, the nat, and we're going to enter that data. We're going to send that over to the insert data file. The insert data is then going to put that into our database. So that'll be in the next video. That's it for this one. If you have any questions, you need to email me about it.